Hey everybody, it's Mr. Morris here, and we're going to talk about the three G's of motivation for European exploration, and then also some of the early explorers. So the first motivation is God. They want to spread Christianity. They believe it's their duty to go and make Christian or non-Christians into Christians, and people who haven't heard of Christianity to tell them about it. Also, the Reformation. You have to remember we talked about it was a lot of people who were originally Catholics, which Spain and Portugal, who are going to do a lot of the early explorations, are Catholic. Well, you have a lot of people turning to be Protestants. Well, to sort of offset this, their goal is to try to, excuse me, convert more people to Christianity, specifically Catholicism. And also from that time, if you remember, the Jesuits, and one of their goals is to spread Christianity. So you have these forces driving them to want to spread out further and find new areas. Another one was gold. They're trying to find a new source of wealth, um, and one of these sources was there's a high demand in the spice trade. So spices like pepper, cinnamon, nutmeg, stuff like that weren't they weren't from here originally. They're from Asia, and the only way they really got to Europe was through this trade route that has to go through Ottomans here, and then through the Italians, and then to them. So by the time they get a chance to get it, the prices are so high they have to pay that when they do sell, they're not making much money. So they figure if they cut these people out, the Ottomans and Italians, they can make more money that way. And also, they heard some stories and saw some evidence through here in North Africa that there's possibly some gold and spices down here in Africa, and they're trying to find their way to that, and I gain a new source of wealth for them. Another one is glory. This is the peninsula where Portugal and Spain are, and for about 700 years, they had been fighting the Muslims who had captured the majority of Spain and fighting them back little by little until 1492 they drove them completely off of this peninsula. And so you had 700 years of these people, young men, soldiers, stuff like that, going and fighting and gaining glory, that way. So now there's nobody to fight. You have all these people wanting to go off and, gain glory. Well, there's nothing here, so they're going to try to find it somewhere else. And notoriety, I mean, that's just like today with you kids and TikToks. Y'all like to have popular TikToks. They want to be recognized for doing something great. That's just something, basic humans like to do. All right. So first we're going to talk about Portugal because they really lead the way in setting off the exploration. So Henry the Navigator is actually a prince of Portugal, and he was interested in finding, sailing and finding a way around to Asia, or even really, getting to Africa, where he heard about there's gold and spices there. So to help that, because they haven't really sailed around that area, he set up a navigation school. And in that school, they had people who helped, develop maps, develop tools, sailing techniques. So some things that came out of that were the caravel. This ship was better than the ships they had before. It could sail into the wind, had these triangular sails, could carry a lot, and it was hard for people like pirates to attack them. So that helped them. Other tools like the sextant, using the stars and the sun, helped them tell them where they are on the earth, longitudinal or latitudinal. And then also a compass, tell them what direction you're heading. You always need to know that because sometimes you get to turn around. So in 1488, after they've been trying this for a good little while here, Bartholomew Diaz reaches the tip of Africa, and I'll show you on a map here in a second. And that was a big point because they know, okay, this is where Africa ends. No one knew where it ended. As far as they knew, it could have went on forever. They found the end of it where they could round it and try to go to Asia. Well, then about 10 years later, Vasco da Gama reaches East Africa, so he makes the turn around the Cape there, the tip of Africa, and then actually makes it to India in 1498. So here you see some of their early voyages, and what they're doing here is one, making maps and sticking close to the coast here, sort of making maps and keeping it safe. And then they're also learning the winds and the tides. So they find out, interestingly enough, that the winds will drive them, out this way, sort of. But if they keep on going out to sea long enough, they'll catch another wind that pushes them right back home. So they sort of learn this and they go out a little bit further and they hit some of these islands and find them. So this shows a little bit of like the information they were gaining by doing this, these little, trips down the African coast. And here you can see a little bit more. They keep on going and going, and they get to here, and then eventually they make it all the way down here with Diaz making it to the Cape of Good Hope here, and he just sort of makes it there and turns around, lets everybody know. And then you have Da Gama here, which on the next page you see him here, makes it all the way around, goes through East Africa, and then shoots across to India, and then makes it back carrying a load of spices. And with those loads of spices, they make a lot of money just off of that one voyage. So they start seeing the dollar signs now. They sort of finally made it after all those years, almost 80 years. They made it finally to Asia, where they've been trying to for this whole time. And now Spain catches up. Like I said, they're right next to each other, and Spain's sort of watching and going on. Is like, let's try to catch up. They're trying to get around to Asia. Let's try it ourselves. So we've all heard the story. Christopher Columbus, Italian, set sail in 1492. The king and queen of Spain, sent him out on this mission, and he's trying to go to Asia, and instead of going how Portugal had gone around here, because he doesn't want to really have to put up with them, and he's thinking in his head he's doing the math, which ends up being way wrong. He thinks it's quicker if you just go this way and Asia somewhere over here. Well, as we know, he didn't find Asia. He found the New World, North America, South America, Central America. So he didn't find Asia, but what we'll find out eventually is he did find something that was really important. And eventually, at first, Spain colonizes these islands in the Caribbean here. So he was trying to find a route to Asia, didn't find it. So now you got a little bit of an issue because you have the Portuguese and the Spanish, and they're both exploring. And some of them made it out here, and now Spain's found all this here. So they're trying to decide who gets what and to make it easy, so there's no arguments. So eventually, with help from the Pope, they come up and make a treaty of Tordesillas, which says, this solid line right here, purple line, anything west, this area, belongs to Spain. Anything east is Portugal. So, Africa, all this stuff. Well, they didn't really think about, don't we have to have another line? Well, they draw another line here eventually about, 30 years later. And everything west of this line is Portugal's, and everything east is Spain's. So they both basically split the earth in half and say, you get this half, we get this half. And then we have Magellan's circumnavigation. So what it means to circumnavigate is to literally sail around the world here. And we see he did this here in 1519. He starts off, goes around here, around the tip of South America, finds the Pacific, makes it all the way across, then finds the Philippines here, where actually Magellan gets killed fighting natives. And then his crew makes it back, crosses the whole Indian Ocean, finds the tip of Africa here, and makes it back home in almost exactly 3 years. So he's the first one to circumnavigate the globe. And now we're going to take our attention back to the Western Hemisphere here, where Spain first landed, and then we're going to talk about first the Aztec Empire. So they knew that there was, land there more than these islands, so they wanted to set up to try to claim some of this land. Well, they send Hernando Cortez, and he lands there, and there's the Aztec Empire here. Well, he allies with people who were fighting against the Aztecs, him and 1,000 men or so, and they eventually marched to the capital, which is in present-day Mexico City. And they got lucky because the people thought they were, signed from God, almost like a messenger. So they thought they had like special powers. Well, eventually, Cortez captures the king Montezuma, kills him, and then eventually, with the help from his allies and the technology of having guns, horses, steel plate armor, stuff like that, and cannons, defeats a lot bigger force of Aztecs. And they basically conquer all what is today present day Mexico from that way. Another person who captured some land for the Spanish, took down the Inca Empire, was Francisco Pizarro. So he comes down here to what is present day Peru, some Bolivia, and Chile. And he captures and kidnaps and holds ransom the king of the Inca. And with that, he demands a ransom. He wants a whole room filled up with gold. Well, the Inca really want their king back, and they fill up the whole room. And, he eventually comes up with a reason and says, you know what? I'm going to kill the king. Kills the king, kills other leaders, and does win, some battles against him because he has gunpowder and guns and horses. And he is outnumbered, but he's able to defeat the Inca Empire, and then Spain gains this land down here. So both of them, through technology, and then for Cortez specifically, he gets allies, tribes to help him, and then for Pizarro, he captures the leader and kills him. Helped them take down these big empires. Another thing that also helped them was smallpox disease. The people in the Americas had no immunity to it, so they would catch it really easy. Well, it's lethal. And that helped weaken these people they ran into. So I think it varies in numbers, but they believe 90% of the people that were here when Columbus first landed died because of disease. So 90%. So they're a lot weaker than they were when they first contacted them. And then we'll talk about the Pilgrims here. They settle in, of course, New England, Massachusetts, and Plymouth Rock. We all know the story that, they sail across. They're trying to go to Virginia. They made it, to Massachusetts, so they land there. The reason they did go there was religious freedom. They couldn't practice their form of Christianity freely, or at least they didn't think they could in England. So they wanted to sail away to the New World and set up a place where they could practice their religion freely without having, any troubles or anything like that. So that is why they sailed across, for religious freedom. And then there were other people also, Europeans, that were exploring, not just Spain and Portugal. Eventually they start seeing, hey, the other nations, they're making some pretty good money. Let's try to get in on this also. So eventually what they're trying to do is find a Northwest Passage, which they think a ocean passage to get around North America. Well, we all know there's no passage there. You have Henry Hudson tries here, finds Hudson Bay, and also before he sailed for the Dutch and found the Hudson River, which is present-day New York City, he sailed up there trying to find a passage through. Well, no one finds a passage. Even a couple hundred years later, Thomas Jefferson, sends Lewis and Clark out west, and one of their missions was to find this Northwest Passage. Doesn't exist. They try to find it, but that's what brought them to North America. So, guys, hopefully you remember the three motivations: God, gold, and glory, that drove exploration in the New World.